I never planned to be the kind of person who chased abandoned places on a Friday night. But life has a way of pulling you toward the things that make you feel alive when everything else feels flat. I grew up in a small Midwestern town where nothing ever really happened. Same diners, same faces, same gossip, recycled every few months. My dad worked maintenance at the county courthouse. My mom bounced between waitressing jobs. And I learned early that if I wanted excitement, I'd have to go looking for it myself. That's how I met Brielle Knox when we were 15, two bored girls skipping rocks behind a condemned movie theater, daring each other to sneak inside. That night changed everything. The smell of dust and mildew, the way our footsteps echoed, the thrill of knowing we weren't supposed to be there. From then on, urban exploration became our thing. Brielle brought a camera everywhere. She said she wanted to document places before they vanished. I didn't care about the pictures, I cared about the feeling. Being somewhere forgotten, standing in a space where time had stopped. By our mid-20s, we'd explored abandoned hospitals, half-collapsed roller rinks, shuttered malls with vines growing through the skylights. We were careful, though, always daylight or early evening. Always told someone where we were going. Always rules. Rule number 1, never split up. Rule number 2, never touch freezers or sealed rooms. Rule number 3, if something feels off, you leave. No debate. Those rules kept us safe for years. Then I met Colton Reyes. Colton came into my life quietly. He worked HVAC, had oil-stained hands and a crooked smile that made people trust him faster than they should. He listened when I talked. He laughed at the right moments. After a childhood of instability, that kind of steadiness felt intoxicating. He didn't love the urban exploring, but he tolerated it. I don't get the appeal, he told me once, sitting on my couch with a beer. Creepy buildings, tetanus waiting to happen. I shrugged. You don't have to get it. It's my thing. He smiled, but something flickered behind his eyes. I ignored it. Brielle didn't like him. She never outright said it, but she didn't have to. The way she'd go quiet when he entered a room. The way she'd roll her eyes when he teased me about my trespassing hobby. Just keep your guard up, she said one night as we walked back to her car, after exploring an abandoned textile mill. Guys like that don't like sharing control. I laughed it off. 2 months ago, on a Thursday afternoon, Brielle called me. Hey, she said, breathless. I need you Saturday night. For what? There's an old burger barn off Route 11, the one near Maple Hollow. I groaned. We've already been there. It's trashed. Totally gutted. I know, she said quickly. But it's getting demolished Sunday morning. This is the last night. It was our first spot together, remember? I did remember. Sneaking in through a busted drive-through window, laughing so hard we nearly gave ourselves away. I don't know, I said. I was planning a quiet night with Colton. There was a pause. Then Brielle said softly, please. For me. That should have been my first warning. I told Colton I'd be gone a few hours. He didn't argue, just kissed my forehead and said, be careful. The burger barn sat at the edge of town, surrounded by weeds and orange construction fencing already half torn down. The sky was that dull purple-blue that comes right before night fully settles in. Inside, the place felt emptier than I remembered. Booths gone. Counters stripped bare. The kitchen looked like a rib cage, exposed pipes, broken tiles. Nothing left of value. Brielle, though, was glowing. She snapped photos nonstop, murmuring things like, this light is perfect. And God, this feels like goodbye. I wandered near the kitchen, uneasy. Brie, I said. I think we've seen enough. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me strangely and asked, aside from Colton, no one knows we're here, right? I frowned. What? Just answer. No, I said slowly. Why? Her head tilted. Do you hear that? I listened. Wind rattling loose metal outside. That was it. I don't hear anything. It's coming from the walk-in freezer. My stomach dropped. Absolutely not, I said. You remember the rule. I know, she said quickly. Just a peek. Together. 5 seconds. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. But this was Brielle, my best friend, the one person I trusted without question. Fine, I said. 5 seconds. She pulled the freezer door open. No smell. Just darkness. I leaned forward and pain exploded at the back of my skull. I woke up choking on cold air. Pitch black. Metal walls. The freezer. Panic surged through me as I slammed my hands against the door. It didn't move. Brielle, I screamed. What the hell are you doing? Footsteps outside. Then a man's voice. Colton's. My blood turned to ice. Is she out? He asked. Yeah, Brielle replied. If she's lucky, she won't wake up before morning. Before the bulldozers. They were going to bury me alive. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from sobbing. My phone was gone. No signal anyway. No way out. Time blurred. Minutes. Hours. My breath fogged the air. Then I had an idea. I pounded weakly on the door. Brielle? I croaked. I wrote a letter. It's in my jacket. For Colton. If they find my body. Silence. Then frantic whispering. Finally. Footsteps. The door cracked open. I lunged. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember thinking. I just shoved them hard backward into the freezer. Slammed the door. Jammed the broken latch. Their screams echoed behind the metal. I took my phone from Brielle's bag and ran. I didn't call the police. 3 hours later, the building came down. 5 hours after that, their bodies were found. Locked together. Frozen. I still explore abandoned places sometimes. But I never go with anyone I don't trust completely. And I never break the rules. I never thought I'd download an app like that. Not because I was above it. Because I was scared of what it meant about me. I was 23. Living in a narrow, off-campus apartment that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. The kind of place where the radiator knocked like someone trapped inside the walls. I'd moved to Hollis Ridge, Ohio for college with big plans and a dumb amount of hope. Psychology major. First in my family to even try university. My mom worked doubles at a nursing home back in Dayton. My dad disappeared when I was 16, left behind an empty driveway and a stack of bills with his name on them. By my junior year, Hope didn't pay rent. I was 2 months behind. My electricity had already been shut off once. I ate ramen so often my stomach hurt just thinking about it. I worked nights at a bar off Route 17, pouring drinks for men who tipped better if you laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Still wasn't enough. That's when I found the ad. It didn't say sugar mommy. It said, discreet companionship, generous allowance, no intimacy required, professional women only. I laughed out loud at first. Like, yeah, sure, sounds legit. But at 3 a.m, with my bank app open, and a negative balance staring back at me, the laughter died quick. I downloaded the app. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't even use my real last name. That was the first mistake. Her profile name was Evelyn Hartwell. No pictures. Just a black background and a short bio. I value honesty, intelligence, and emotional awareness. I help those who listen. I almost swiped past it. Then the message came in. Evelyn, you're awake late. That usually means worry. My chest tightened. I told myself it was coincidence. Me, just studying. 3 dots appeared immediately. Evelyn. No. You're calculating. Rent, tuition, groceries. You skipped dinner again. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Me. That's a pretty safe guess for a college student. Evelyn. You tell yourself that so you don't panic. I should have closed the app right there. Instead, I replied. Our conversations didn't feel flirtatious. They felt clinical, calm, focused. She asked about my classes, my childhood, my sleep schedule, what scared me most about failing. She never pushed for photos, never asked to meet, never crossed a sexual line. Then, 2 days later, she sent me $500. No warning, no request. Just a message. Evelyn, for groceries. Eat something warm tonight. I cried in my kitchen. Full-on ugly cried. Because no one had ever noticed things like that about me before. We established an arrangement. Weekly allowance, daily conversation, total discretion. She called it emotional presence. I called it survival. That's when the weird stuff started. She'd message me before I opened the app. Evelyn, don't take the bus tonight. Walk. I ignored it once. That night, the bus I would have taken hit a drunk driver at an intersection near campus. 2 people injured. I watched it on the local news, hands shaking. Another time. Evelyn, your professor is going to move the exam. Stop stressing. An hour later, mass email. Exam postponed. I joked about it. Me? What are you, psychic? She didn't reply for a long time. Then, Evelyn, I pay attention. That answer stuck with me in a way I couldn't explain. We finally agreed to meet after a month. Public place. Daytime. My rules. She chose Briarstone Cafe. A quiet spot near the river, where grad students pretended to work. She was already there when I arrived. Mid-50 seconds. Sharp eyes. Expensive coat that didn't belong in Ohio weather. Calm posture. Like nothing ever rushed her. Sit, she said gently. Not rude. Just certain. We talked for hours. She knew details I didn't remember telling her. My high school mascot. The name of my childhood dog. The fact that I used to lock my bedroom door even when no one else was home. That's not normal, I said finally, trying to laugh it off. She smiled. Normal is a story people tell themselves. When we stood to leave, she touched my wrist lightly. You don't have to be afraid, she said. I'm already keeping you safe. That was the first time I felt real fear. After that, the control started slipping through the cracks. She told me what classes to skip, which friends were temporary, which routes to walk home. And every time I didn't listen, something happened. Small things at first. Missed opportunities, lost items, a locked door when I needed it open. Then bigger. One night she messaged, Evelyn, don't go home yet. Me. Why? Evelyn. Because someone is waiting there. I called the police instead. They found a man in the alley behind my building. No charges. Probably a misunderstanding. Evelyn sent my allowance early that week. I tried to quit. Typed out a long message about boundaries, independence, gratitude, but finality. Before I could send it, she messaged me. Evelyn, if you leave, you'll lose your scholarship. My phone buzzed immediately after. Email notification. Academic review pending due to irregular attendance. I dropped the phone. How are you doing this? I whispered to my empty apartment. Her reply came slow. Evelyn, I don't do anything. Systems do. That night, I dug. I Googled her name. Fake. No records. No trace. Then I checked the payment source. Not a person. A trust. Connected to a shell company. Connected to a research firm I'd never heard of. Hartwell Behavioral Systems. Government adjacent. Predictive analytics. Human pattern modeling. I wasn't a sugar baby. I was a data point. The last time we spoke, I confronted her. You're using me. There was a pause longer than usual. Evelyn, you volunteered. I didn't consent to this. Evelyn. Consent is only meaningful when all outcomes are visible. My chest burned. What do you want from me? Another pause. Evelyn. To see how far fear can replace freedom before a person notices. I deleted the app. Blocked the payments. Reported the company. Nothing happened. 2 weeks later, the money stopped. My scholarship was reinstated. The app vanished from the store, like it never existed. But sometimes, when my phone lights up at night with no notification, I swear I can feel someone watching me calculate my next move. Still paying attention. I never thought my life would split cleanly into a before and an after. But looking back now, everything that mattered ended the night I realized I never truly knew the man sleeping beside me. My name is Ivy Calder, and before all of this, I was painfully ordinary. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a vape shop in Hollis Ridge, Ohio, a town that smelled like wet asphalt and fryer oil year-round. I worked mornings at a medical billing office and nights tutoring community college kids who hated algebra more than they hated themselves. My life was quiet, predictable, and lonely, in that slow, aching way that sneaks up on you when your 20s start slipping by faster than you planned. Then I met Rowan Pike. Rowan had that careless charm that made you feel younger just standing next to him. He worked warehouse logistics, had crooked teeth he never bothered fixing, and laughed too loud at his own jokes. He was the kind of guy who talked with his hands and called everyone, dude, even his mom. On our first date, he spilled his beer all over the bar table and said, "Guess that's a sign I'm nervous, huh?" I laughed. I liked that he wasn't polished. I liked that he didn't feel rehearsed. What I didn't realize back then was that Rowan didn't know where the line was between funny and cruel. At first, the pranks were harmless. He'd hide behind doors and jump out yelling, "Boo!" Then double over laughing while I caught my breath. He once replaced my phone ringtone with a recording of himself screaming, which went off in the middle of a dentist's office. Embarrassing, sure, but I laughed it off. "Lighten up," he'd say, grinning. "You scare easy. It's cute." After 6 months, it stopped being cute. He put fake roaches in my cereal box. Swapped my face wash with hair dye, thank God I noticed before using it. Once, while I was showering, he cut the bathroom lights and blasted a police siren sound through a Bluetooth speaker. I screamed so hard the downstairs tenant banged on the ceiling. I told him to stop. Calmly at first. "Rowan, seriously, I don't like this." He kissed my forehead. "Babe, you're fine. It's just jokes." Then, not so calmly, "I'm asking you to stop." He rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic." By the time we hit our 1-year anniversary, I was exhausted. Not just annoyed, emotionally drained, like I was constantly bracing for impact in my own home. I started sleeping lightly, jumping at sounds, flinching when he touched me unexpectedly. I thought about leaving. I think he felt it. Because, suddenly, everything changed. The pranks stopped. Completely. Weeks went by. Then a month. Rowan started cooking dinner. Leaving notes on the fridge, "Drive safe, miss you already." He listened when I talked. Really listened. When I said I was stressed, he didn't joke it away. He hugged me instead. One night, while we were folding laundry, he said, "I know I've been kind of a jerk." I froze, holding a sock. "Kind of." He sighed. "Okay. A lot. I'm trying to be better." I wanted to believe him. When he surprised me with an air fryer, I almost cried. It was expensive, way more than we usually spent on random gifts. "For real?" I asked, staring at the box. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said, beaming. "You've been talking about it forever." I went all over Northway Electronics trying to find the best one. That should have been my first red flag. Rowan hated shopping. Hated patience. Hated effort. But I pushed the thought aside. People can change, right? I dragged the box into the kitchen and started unpacking it. Manuals, warranty cards, styrofoam. Everything looked factory fresh. Until I pulled open the bottom tray. Something rolled. At first, my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Grayish skin. A nail painted a chipped, burnt orange. A jagged bit of bone protruding from one end. A finger. A real finger. I screamed. The air fryer slipped from my hands and crashed onto the tile. The finger bounced once. Twice. Then came to rest near the fridge. Rowan ran in. "What happened?" I was shaking so hard my teeth hurt. I picked the finger up, it was cold. Soft in a way plastic never is. "You think this is funny?" I yelled. "You think this is okay?" He stared at it. His smile gone. Ivy. I swear to God. I didn't do that. Don't lie to me." My voice cracked. "You promised you were done." "I am done," he said quietly. I didn't put that there. Something in his tone gave me pause. Not panic. Not guilt. Fear. I made a snap decision. "Then we're calling the cops." He hesitated just a second too long, then nodded. "Yeah, okay, let's go." He sealed the finger in a sandwich bag and drove us to the Hollis Ridge Police Department. The whole way, I waited for him to confess. to laugh, to say, "Got you." He never did. Outside the station, I said, "Last chance. If this is a joke, say it now." He looked straight ahead. "If it is, I didn't put it there." I got out of the car. He didn't. The engine revved. Tires squealed. Rowan drove away with the evidence. That was the last time I ever saw him alive. The cops took my statement, but without proof, it went nowhere. Missing boyfriend. Strange story. No body, no crime. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to Northway Electronics. The employee at the counter glanced at Rowan's photo and immediately stiffened. "Oh, him." She told me security had escorted him out after catching him opening appliance boxes in the air fryer aisle. Her nails were painted the same burnt orange. I asked about it. "My sister uses the same color," she said. "Lennox. She works here too. Or did. She hasn't shown up in a week." My stomach dropped. We checked the aisle together. Every box. Every tray. Fingers. Teeth. An ear. An eye. All real. All human. The police arrested Rowan the next day in an abandoned meatpacking plant outside town. On the news, reporters asked him why. He just smiled and said, "I thought it was funny." They found Lennox Pike, his older sister, in pieces across 3 counties. He never explained more than that. I moved away after the trial. Changed my name. Started over. But sometimes, when I hear a sudden noise behind me, when I open a drawer I don't remember opening, I still feel that cold, impossible weight in my hand. And I remember how easily love can turn into terror. Not all at once, but slowly, like a joke that goes on too long. I never imagined my life would shrink this small. There was a time doesn't feel that long ago when I believed I was doing everything right. College degree. No criminal record. No addictions. No major screw-ups. I thought that was enough. Turns out, in America, that just means you're one bad year away from drowning. I'm 31 now. But when this story started, I was 28 and living in a 1-bedroom apartment above a closed-down pawn shop in Hollister Row, Indiana. The kind of place where the stairs creak no matter how softly you step and the hallway always smells faintly like mildew and old cigarettes. Rent was cheap, but only because the landlord didn't care if the heat cut out twice a month. I worked remote customer support for a logistics company based out of Denver. Flexible hours, they called it. What that really meant was 12-hour shifts, angry callers, and a paycheck that barely covered rent and utilities. When my dad passed away suddenly from a stroke, everything tipped. Funeral costs, medical bills, time off work I couldn't afford. My savings evaporated in less than 3 months. By winter, I was skipping meals without really admitting it to myself. You start calling it intermittent fasting so it doesn't feel like poverty. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that something would break my way. Instead, my hours got cut. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, refreshing my banking app like it might magically change. $46. That was it. Rent was due in 10 days. I laughed out loud. A short, ugly sound. That's when I remembered the ad. I'd seen it weeks earlier while doom scrolling at 2 a.m. Some sponsored post buried between crypto scams and self-help gurus. Discreet arrangements, no judgment. Mutual benefit. I downloaded the app without thinking too hard. Told myself I was just curious. The app didn't look sleazy. No neon colors. No half-naked profiles. Just muted tones and bios written like business proposals. People stating exactly what they wanted, no pretending. That scared me more than anything. I created a profile using an old photo-clean shirt, decent lighting. I hesitated before filling out the expectations section. Finally, I typed, looking for stability. Open to guidance. Guidance. Another word I didn't examine too closely. That's when Renee Whitlow messaged me. Her profile picture was simple. Late 50 seconds. Gray-brown hair pulled back tight. Pearl earrings. Sharp eyes that looked like they missed nothing. Her bio read, widowed. Traditional values. I support those who respect boundaries and structure. Structure again. We chatted that night. And the next. She didn't flirt. She didn't ask for photos. She asked about my bills, my credit score, my plans. "You seem lost," she typed at one point. I stared at that message for a long time before replying. "Yeah, I am." Her response came instantly. "That's not a flaw. It's an opportunity." She invited me to dinner that weekend. Her house was outside Briar Creek, about an hour's drive. She offered gas money up front. Venmo notification hit my phone before I could respond. That should have been my second warning. Renee's house sat at the edge of a wooded neighborhood where the mailboxes all matched and the lawns were trimmed within an inch of their lives. White, colonial, black shutters. American flag on the porch, perfectly folded at night. She greeted me with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Shoes off," she said kindly. "I keep the floors clean." Inside, everything smelled like lemon polish and cooked meat. The living room was pristine, untouched. Family photos lined the mantel. Her late husband, younger Renee, and a boy in every stage of growing up. "That's Caleb," she said, noticing my glance. "My son." He appeared a moment later at the top of the stairs. Early 30s, button-down shirt, hair neatly parted. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Nice to meet you," he said. "Mom's told me a bit." That made my stomach tighten. Dinner was pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, comfort food. Renee watched me eat. "You can slow down," she said gently. "No one's taking it away." I hadn't realized I was eating fast. Conversation stayed polite but guided. She corrected small things. How I held my fork. How I spoke about my job. "We don't complain," she said at one point. "We adapt." Caleb nodded along, silent. When I reached for salt, her fork tapped the plate. "We taste first." I froze, then laughed awkwardly and set it down. "I'm just particular," she said, smiling. "You understand." I told myself I did. After dinner, she showed me the guest room. Crisp sheets, hospital corners. "You're welcome to stay the night," she said. "It's late." I hesitated. Caleb spoke up. "It's safer than driving tired." That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan and told myself I was overreacting. That this was just an adjustment. That structure wasn't the same thing as control. I fell asleep convincing myself I needed this. I didn't hear the door open. I didn't hear footsteps. I only woke when something cold and greasy pressed against my lips. I woke up gasping. Not screaming. Not thrashing. Just that sharp inhale. Like my lungs forgot what they were supposed to do. For a split second, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling fan above me spun too slowly, clicking once every rotation. The room smelled clean. Too clean. Like detergent and something faintly meaty underneath, lingering from dinner. Nothing had happened. That's what I told myself. Still, I checked my mouth with my tongue, half expecting to taste something foreign. There was nothing. No grease, no salt, no gravy. I lay there for a long time, listening to the house settle. Somewhere downstairs, a floorboard creaked. I told myself it was pipes. Old houses always made noise. My heart eventually slowed, and exhaustion dragged me back under. Morning came with sunlight slicing through the curtains. Renee was already up. Of course she was. Breakfast was waiting on the table, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee, poured exactly halfway up the mug. "You sleep okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said automatically. Caleb sat across from me, scrolling his phone. He looked up and smiled. "Mom wakes up early. Always has." Renee nodded. "Discipline matters." I ate quietly. Everything tasted fine. Normal. Too normal. The fear from the night before began to feel silly, like a dream losing its edges. After breakfast, Renee got straight to business. "I don't like ambiguity," she said, folding her hands. "If we're going to do this, expectations need to be clear." She slid an envelope across the table. Inside was cash. More than I'd held in months. "This covers your rent for the next 2 months," she said calmly. "Utilities too. In exchange, I expect honesty, respect." My throat tightened. "And boundaries?" I asked. She smiled. Of course. Caleb stood. I've got errands, he said, avoiding my eyes. Before I left that afternoon, Renee hugged me. Tight. Lingering. Eat better, she whispered. You're too thin. I drove home feeling lighter. Safer. Ashamed of how relieved I was. The arrangement escalated quickly. Renee texted daily. Not romantic messages. Check-ins. Did you eat? Send me a photo. You sound tired. Go to bed earlier. She paid off one credit card. Then another. I started visiting her house every weekend. Caleb was always there. Always polite. Always watching. At first, I thought he was just protective. A grown man living with his mother, awkward, but not unheard of. He'd cook sometimes. He'd clean. He deferred to her on everything. She knows best, he said once, laughing. The phrase stuck with me. Rules started appearing. Subtle at first. No phones at the table. Finish what's on your plate. We eat together. If I disagreed, Renee didn't argue. She just went quiet, and silence from her felt worse than anger. One night, during dinner, I mentioned a job interview. Renee paused mid-bite. You don't need another job, she said. I just thought, you're exhausted as it is, she cut in gently. Why add stress? Caleb nodded. Mom's right. I dropped the subject. The first time I felt real fear was during the second overnight stay. Dinner went fine. Renee seemed pleased, almost affectionate. But later, when Caleb and I were upstairs, I heard her moving around below us. Cabinets opening. The clink of a spoon against a pot. I leaned toward Caleb. I think your mom's still cooking. She worries if people don't eat enough, he said. That's not normal, I whispered. He frowned. You're overthinking. We went to bed. He fell asleep quickly. I didn't. Sometime after midnight. The door creaked. I froze. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Something cold touched my lips. My eyes flew open. Renee stood over me, spoon in hand, thick brown gravy glistening under the hallway light. Her face was calm, serene. Midnight snack, she whispered. I gagged and spit. Gravy splattered across her cheek. What the hell are you doing? I shouted. She didn't flinch. You didn't finish dinner. I shook Caleb awake, my voice cracking. Caleb, she's feeding me. He blinked, saw the gravy dripping down my chin and sighed. It's okay, he said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. Just let her feed you a little, then go back to sleep. Mama knows best. Something inside me broke. I wiped my face with the sheet, shoved past Renee, and ran. Outside, the air was freezing. I didn't stop to think. I grabbed Caleb's car keys from the dresser and bolted. I drove barefoot down the dark road, hands shaking, stomach turning. By the time I hit the highway, dawn was creeping in. My phone buzzed. Renee. Then Caleb. I turned it off. I haven't gone back. Renee never messaged again. Caleb left voicemails. Calm, confused, hurt. It was just care, he said in one. She was helping. Sometimes, late at night, I wake up tasting gravy, and I wonder how many people before me didn't run. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not my friends. Not my coworkers. Not even the therapist I started seeing 3 weeks later when I couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time. I told her I was dealing with boundary issues. That sounded cleaner, safer. Like something you could fix with breathing exercises and a journal. The truth was harder to say out loud. The truth was that part of me still felt guilty for leaving. That's what messed me up the most. I moved apartments a month later. New place. Different part of town, West Elbridge. Closer to the highway. Farther from trees. I needed noise. Silence made my skin crawl. Silence reminded me of that house settling at night. Of footsteps I couldn't hear until they were already too close. I blocked Renee's number. Caleb found another way. Emails. Long ones. Calm. Reasonable. Terrifying in their normalcy. Mom's been worried sick. You misunderstood her intentions. She's old-fashioned, not dangerous. You should apologize. It would mean a lot to her. I never replied. 2 months passed. Then 3. Life stabilized on the surface. New job, decent pay. I even started cooking again, simple stuff. Pasta. Eggs. But gravy made me nauseous. I stopped ordering anything that came with it. At diners, I'd ask for substitutions and feel stupid for how fast my heart would race. One evening, I came home to find a small package outside my door. No return address. Inside was a glass jar. Gravy. Still warm. My hands shook so badly I dropped it. The jar shattered on the tile, brown liquid spreading across the floor, filling my nose with that same thick, meaty smell. At the bottom of the box was a note, written in careful cursive. You looked thin last time I saw you. I threw up. I called the police. They took a report, asked questions, nodded sympathetically. There's no direct threat, the officer said. Could be a prank. I didn't argue. How do you explain something like this without sounding insane? The emails stopped after that. So did the packages. I thought it was over. A year later, I was doing better. Sleeping, eating, almost normal. That's when I saw the article. Local news. Small headline. Briar Creek woman, arrested in elder abuse investigation. I clicked. Renee Whitlow. 59. Accused of drugging and restraining a live-in caregiver. Her adult son, Caleb Whitlow. Questioned but not charged. The photo showed Renee being led into a squad car, calm, composed, hair pulled back, same pearl earrings. The article mentioned feeding rituals and compliance conditioning. I closed my laptop and sat there for a long time. I didn't feel relief. I felt lucky. Lucky that I ran barefoot into the night instead of convincing myself to stay. Lucky that I still had a life outside of her house. Lucky that the taste in my mouth eventually faded, even if the memory never did. Some nights, when I wake suddenly, I still hear a spoon clink against a plate, and I remind myself, I left. That's the difference. I never thought I'd measure my life in declined transactions. It wasn't dramatic at first. No big explosion, no screaming matches, just small humiliations that stacked up quietly, like overdue envelopes on a kitchen counter. My name is Elliot Ward, and when this story started, I was 34 years old, sitting in my car outside a 24-hour gas station in Millbrook, Indiana, watching frost creep along the edges of my windshield while my phone screen glowed red. Payment declined. Again. I rubbed my face with both hands, palms cold, jaw tight. The dashboard clock read 2:11 a.m. My stomach hurt in that hollow, acidic way it does when you've been surviving on diner coffee and one meal a day. Inside the station, the cashier, a kid maybe 19, pretended not to notice me sitting there. He was scrolling his phone, leaning on the counter like nothing in the world could touch him yet. I envied that. I turned the key, but the engine hesitated before catching. That tiny pause made my heart jump. I whispered, "Come on, come on," like the car could hear desperation in my voice. As I pulled onto the road, a thought kept looping in my head. This wasn't supposed to be my life. 5 years earlier, I had a clean resume, a salaried position at a mid-sized civil design firm, and a one-bedroom apartment with exposed brick and a balcony that overlooked a dry canal. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Back then, my girlfriend Rachel used to joke that I was boring in a safe way. "You're the kind of guy people marry," she'd say, brushing her teeth, voice full of foam. Not the kind they worry about. She stopped saying that toward the end. The firm folded after a state contract collapsed. Half the staff was gone in a month. The severance barely covered rent. Rachel stayed quiet for weeks, then packed her things one afternoon while I was at a job interview that went nowhere. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She just said, "I can't drown with you, Eli. I need air." I didn't blame her. After that, time stopped feeling linear. Days blurred into shifts, bartending, food delivery, freelance drafting gigs that paid insultingly little. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, listening to the building creak, calculating numbers that never worked. That's how hunger really starts, not in the stomach, but in the chest. The need to breathe without panic. The forum wasn't something I planned to find. It popped up during one of those sleepless nights when I was scrolling aimlessly, phone inches from my face, trying not to think about the final notice from my landlord sitting unopened on the table. The site looked plain. No ads, no obvious branding, just threads with titles like alternative arrangements, discreet support, mutual needs. At first, I laughed under my breath. Jesus, I muttered. This is sad. I didn't post, I just read. Men and women negotiating companionship like contracts. Some were obvious scams. Others, less so. What struck me wasn't the sex. It was the language. Stability. Consistency. Care. Words that sounded almost gentle. I closed the app. Opened it again. Then, at 1:07 a.m., my inbox chimed. The username was Lace Harbor. The message was short. You look like someone who's tired of pretending he's fine. I stared at it. My first instinct was anger. My second was embarrassment. I typed back, "You've got the wrong person." The reply came almost instantly. "No, I don't. You haven't slept properly in months, you miss having structure, and you'd rather be useful than desired. Men like you always are." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This is bullshit, I told myself. But I replied anyway. Her name was Maribel Cross. She suggested we meet in public. No pressure. No expectations. Her words. We chose a restaurant downtown, one of those places with cloth napkins and a host stand that makes you feel underdressed no matter what you're wearing. I almost turned around when I saw the valet. I stood in the bathroom beforehand, staring at my reflection. The button-down shirt I'd ironed that morning still looked tired. So did I. Just dinner, I whispered to myself. That's it. She stood when she saw me. Mid-50s. Dark auburn hair pulled back neatly, minimal makeup, calm eyes that didn't rush to fill silence. "Elliot," she said, smiling softly, "I'm glad you came." Her voice wasn't flirtatious. It was measured. We talked for 2 hours. She asked about my work, my parents, my routines. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush. When I stumbled over words, she waited. When the bill came, I instinctively reached for my wallet. She gently pushed my hand back. "I invited you," she said. "Please don't insult me." The bill had more digits than my rent. Outside, a black sedan idled at the curb. "I'm not asking you for anything tonight," she said, touching my forearm lightly. "Just think about whether you'd like your life to feel quieter." That word quieter hit me harder than money ever could. 3 days later, my landlord taped the eviction notice to my door. I called her. That was the moment my life tilted. At first, it was almost clinical. Dinner once a week, cash in envelopes, no questions, no intimacy. She called it support. "You don't owe me performance," she said once. "I value presence." I quit bartending at her suggestion. "You're not built for apologizing," she said. "It erodes men like you." Her condo sat on the river's edge, glass walls reflecting city lights. Everything inside was tasteful. Expensive, empty, no photos, no clutter. I asked once if she had family. She smiled thinly. Not the kind that stays. The first time she touched me, it felt less like desire and more like assessment. I told myself it was temporary. That lie kept me warm. By the end of the month, my rent was paid 6 months ahead. The calls stopped. The panic softened. That's when the rules began. After 10, I expect quiet, she said casually. I prefer discretion. If you're late, don't rush. I dislike anxiety. They didn't sound like threats. That's what made them dangerous. One night, I was late. Traffic. An accident on Route 9. When I arrived, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold me. She simply didn't speak. She watched me eat, sipped her wine, observed. At the end, she slid the envelope across the table. "You don't like disappointing people," she said calmly. "Do you?" I didn't answer. That was the first time I felt the wire tighten. The photo appeared 2 weeks later. On my apartment floor, me, walking out of a hardware store. On the back, in neat handwriting, "Awareness is a form of care." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't confront her about the photo right away. That's the part people don't understand when they hear stories like this later. They ask, why didn't you leave? Or why didn't you call someone? Fear doesn't announce itself with alarms. It settles in quietly and starts making decisions for you. I stared at that photograph for a long time that night. Me, frozen mid-step, keys in my hand, unaware. The lighting suggested late afternoon, which meant she or someone she hired had been close enough to smell the sawdust on my jacket. I slipped the photo back into the envelope and shoved it into a drawer like that could erase it. The next evening, I went to her condo as planned. She greeted me with the same calm smile, the same soft voice. Long day? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. We sat at the dining table overlooking the river. City lights shimmered on the water like nothing in the world could go wrong. I slid the envelope across the table. What's this? She asked, though her eyes flicked to it immediately. You know what it is, I said, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. That photo. That crossed a line. She didn't look surprised. She leaned back, folded her hands, and studied me the way a therapist might. I worried, she said finally. You weren't answering your phone. So you followed me? She tilted her head slightly. I made sure you were safe. That's not safety, I said. That's surveillance. A pause. Elliot, she said gently, you're confusing concern with control. I laughed under my breath. No, I'm really not. She reached for her wine, unbothered. Men like you, she said, have spent your whole lives being overlooked. I see you. I notice when you're quiet, when you drift. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. This isn't what we agreed to. She looked up at me, eyes steady. No, she said, this is what you accepted. That shut me up. She slid the envelope of cash toward me anyway. Take it, she said. We'll talk, when you're less emotional. I hated myself for taking it. After that, things changed not all at once, but enough that I started adjusting without realizing it. I stopped answering calls after 10. Stopped posting online. Stopped telling friends where I was going. When my old coworker Derek texted me, "You alive, man?" I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, then didn't reply. Maribel noticed. "You seem lighter," she said one night, touching my arm. Less cluttered. She began buying me things. Clothes that fit too well. A watch that cost more than my car. Shoes I was afraid to scuff. When I hesitated, she frowned. "Don't reject care," she said quietly. "It feels personal." The word reject stuck with me, as if saying no was a betrayal. One evening, rain hammered against the glass walls of her living room. The city beyond looked distorted, unreal. She poured wine, then didn't drink it. "Tell me about your mother," she said. I froze slightly. "What about her?" "You mentioned once that she died young." I swallowed. "Cancer." I was 17. She nodded slowly. That's when boys learn not to ask for things. The accuracy made my skin prickle. She moved closer on the couch. "Who took care of you after?" she asked. "No one," I said. "I figured it out." Her hand rested on my knee. "That's a heavy thing," she murmured. "To raise yourself." Her voice softened in a way that felt dangerous. "You don't have to do that with me." That night, when we slept together, something felt wrong in a way I couldn't name yet. Not violent, not forced, just misaligned. Like I was being placed into a role I hadn't auditioned for. The rules became expectations. The expectations became consequences. If I missed a dinner, the envelope was thinner. If I questioned her tone, she withdrew, cold, silent, distant. Silence became punishment. I found myself apologizing for things I didn't understand. "I didn't mean to upset you," I'd say. She'd respond calmly. "I know. You're learning." That word again. Learning. The confession came on a Thursday. We were sitting in her upper-level sitting room, the rain tapping softly against the glass ceiling. She looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. "Elliot," she said, not looking at me. "You remind me of my son." The air left my lungs. I didn't know you had a son, I said carefully. Had, she corrected. Past tense. My mouth went dry. I'm sorry. She finally looked at me. He was 35. Kind, brilliant. Her fingers tightened around the glass. And he left. Left this world. I failed him, she whispered. I didn't protect him enough. She reached for my hand, gripping it hard. I won't make that mistake again. Something inside me screamed wrong. You're not my son, I said gently. And I'm not a replacement. Her expression changed instantly. Flat, controlled. No, she said. You're better. My heart started pounding. You're here. That night. She asked me to promise something. Promise you won't disappear, she said. Promise you'll tell me before you leave. I nodded. I don't know why. Fear has a way of sounding like reason. The key was the last straw. I woke up to the sound of my apartment door unlocking. Every muscle in my body locked. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and stepped into the living room. She stood there in the dark, holding a spare key. You didn't answer, she said softly. I was worried. I snapped. You can't just walk into my home, I shouted. What the hell is wrong with you? Her face hardened. This is what caretakers do, she said. We check. I'm not your child, I yelled. And this is over. The silence afterward felt heavy, charged. Then she smiled. You'll understand, she said quietly. Eventually. 2 days later, I went to the police. They listened, took notes, looked bored. She hasn't threatened you directly, the officer said. You accepted financial support voluntarily. I walked out feeling small and exposed. That night, she called. Her voice was gentle. Don't involve strangers, she said. It hurts me. A pause. And when I hurt, things fall apart. The next morning, a dead bird was pinned to my door. Carefully. Deliberately. That's when I packed my car. I didn't sleep after the bird. I stood in my apartment staring at it, feathers stiff, neck twisted at an unnatural angle. Pinned with surgical care. No blood splatter. No mess. It wasn't rage. It was a message. My hands shook as I unlocked my phone. I didn't call her. I didn't answer anything. I just started packing fast, sloppy. Throwing clothes into duffel bags, knocking over a lamp, breaking a glass I didn't bother to clean up. By sunrise, my car was full. I didn't have a plan. Just a direction. West. As I pulled out of Millbrook, my chest felt tight. Like I was doing something illegal just by leaving. Every red light felt too long. Every car behind me felt intentional. At a gas station 2 hours out, I stopped to refuel. My hands were trembling so badly I spilled gas on my shoes. Inside, I paid cash. When I came back out, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I knew. I drove for 12 hours straight. Slept in my car. Changed my number the next day. Took back roads. Paid cash. Stayed nowhere long enough to feel real. For weeks, I existed like a shadow. I landed in Ridgecrest, Oregon. Got a junior drafting position under a different email. Told no one where I was. I worked. Ate. Slept. Survived. 3 months passed. Then 6. Then a year. No messages. No photos. No birds. Life slowly resumed. I found a small apartment. Painted the walls. Bought a plant. Let myself believe it was over. That was my mistake. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was leaving work early, rain misting the parking lot. As I reached my car, something caught my eye on the windshield. An envelope, cream-colored, neatly placed. My heart dropped into my stomach. Inside was a photograph. Me. Taken from across the street. On the back, written in the same careful handwriting. You look healthier. I'm glad. I threw up in the parking lot. The police here took it more seriously. Maybe because time had passed. Maybe because fear had finally learned how to speak clearly. They documented everything, took statements, told me to stay alert. But fear doesn't disappear when it's acknowledged. It sharpens. I started checking locks obsessively. Windows, shadows, reflections. Every woman with auburn hair made my pulse spike. Years have passed now. I've moved again. New firm, new city, new routines. On paper, I'm free. But sometimes, late at night, when my phone buzzes unexpectedly, my chest tightens. Because belonging, real belonging, should feel safe. And the worst thing I ever learned is this. Some people don't want love. They want permanence. And permanence doesn't require consent. I don't know where she is. I don't know if she's watching. But every morning I wake up, take a breath, and remind myself, I am not owned, even if part of me still feels like I am. I never thought I'd be the kind of person whose life could be summarized by an eviction notice taped crookedly to a door. But there it was. White paper, red ink, final warning. I stood barefoot on the cracked linoleum of my apartment, staring at my own name printed in bold letters like it belonged to someone else. The place smelled like instant noodles and damp concrete. A siren wailed somewhere outside. Distant but familiar background noise for a city that never cared who survived and who didn't. My name is Jonah Reeve, and at 26 years old, I was officially out of chances. People like to imagine California as sunshine and second chances, but nobody talks about the quiet humiliation of failing here. The way the city doesn't yell at you, it just keeps going while you fall behind. I grew up in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. The kind of town where the loudest thing after 9 p.m. was the wind-rattling old store signs. My dad drove delivery trucks. My mom worked the night shift at a nursing home. They weren't unhappy people, just tired ones. I was supposed to be different. College brochures promised escape. Opportunity. A future that didn't smell like diesel and disinfectant. I left home at 19 with a duffel bag and borrowed confidence. By 22, I dropped out of film school in Northern California with debt and no degree. By 26, I was living in Hollister Heights, in a studio apartment that used to be a storage unit. I worked nights at a diner called Rusty Mile, right off the highway. Truckers, exhausted nurses, drunks who needed grease to soak up regret. The coffee tasted burnt no matter how fresh it was. My landlord, Eldon Krause, didn't believe in second chances. You're not a bad kid, he told me once. Arms crossed, keys jingling. But good intentions don't pay mortgages. I nodded like I understood. Truth was, I hadn't eaten a full meal in 2 days. That night, the diner was slow. Rain tapped against the windows, steady and patient. Around 10:30 p.m., she walked in. She didn't look lost. She didn't look lonely. She looked like she belonged wherever she stood. Mid-50 seconds, maybe older. Sharp posture. Hair silver but styled deliberately, not trying to hide age, owning it. She wore a dark coat that still smelled faintly of expensive perfume and cold air. She slid into a booth near the back. I brought water. She didn't touch it. Coffee, she said. Black, no refills. Her voice was calm, controlled. I poured the coffee, set it down, and started to walk away when she said, "You look like you're running on fumes." I stopped, turned back. "Rough shift," I said automatically. She studied me for a moment, then said, "Rough life." That landed harder than it should have. She introduced herself as Lenora Blythe. No small talk, no flirting, just quiet questions. "How long have you lived here?" "Too long." "Do you like it?" "No." She nodded as if confirming something to herself. When she left, she tipped $100. The next night, she came back. Same booth, same order. This time she asked my name. I told her. She said it softly, like testing how it sounded. "Jonah." She came back again. And again. Never touched me. Never crossed a line. Until one night, after closing, when the diner was empty, and the rain had finally stopped. She waited while I wiped down the counter. "You're drowning," she said gently, "and you're pretending you're not." I laughed, a little too sharp. "You don't even know me." She met my eyes. I know desperation when I see it. Silence stretched between us. "There are ways out," she continued. "Not all of them are ugly." I felt my chest tighten. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Lenora said, reaching into her purse, "that sometimes survival requires humility. She placed a small card on the counter. No name. Just a phone number. Think about it, she said, standing. I don't rush men who are already broken. She walked out before I could respond. 3 days later, Eldon changed the locks. That's when I made the call. I called the number at 3:17 a.m. I remember the time because my phone screen was cracked, and the numbers blurred together unless I stared hard. I sat on the edge of a borrowed couch in my friend's apartment, someone who'd already made it clear I couldn't stay more than a night or two. The phone rang twice. Then her voice. Jonah, Lenora said calmly, like she'd been expecting it. I was wondering when you'd decide to live. My throat felt tight. You don't waste time, do you? No, she replied. Neither should you. She told me where to meet her the next evening. No explanation. No instructions beyond. Be clean. Be on time. The place was Ridgewater, a private dining club tucked into the hills, no sign outside. Just a security gate and a man in a suit who checked names like he was guarding a vault. Lenora was already seated when I arrived. She didn't ask how I was. She asked, Do you know what you're agreeing to? I don't know anything yet, I said carefully. She gestured for me to sit. I don't buy people, she said. I invest in stability, mutual benefit. I waited. You will never worry about rent again, she continued, or groceries, or medical bills. You will have privacy, comfort, and in return, I asked. 1 evening a week, she said. My time, your attention. My heart pounded. Sex? She didn't flinch. If I want it. Silence. And if I say no, then you leave, Lenora said simply. No harm, no threats. I searched her face for deceit. I found none. That should have scared me more. Why me? I asked. She smiled faintly. Because you're desperate enough to be honest. I agreed. Not because I trusted her. Because I had nowhere else to go. The change was immediate. Within 48 hours, my debts vanished. My belongings, what little I had, were moved into a modern apartment overlooking Silver Point Marina. Floor-to-ceiling windows, stainless steel appliances. A bed that didn't creak when I breathed. I stood in the living room that first night, barefoot on polished wood floors, laughing quietly like a man who expected the illusion to vanish any second. Lenora called. Get used to it, she said. Shock fades quickly. Our first evening together wasn't sexual. We ate dinner at her home, an expansive house perched above the cliffs, overlooking the ocean. The place was immaculate but not cozy. Art on the walls that felt chosen. Not loved. She poured wine herself. You're nervous, she observed. Wouldn't you be? I said. She smiled. No. I don't place myself in situations I can't control. That sentence stayed with me. Over the next few weeks, the arrangement settled into routine. Every Thursday night. Dinner. Conversation. Sometimes sex. Sometimes not. She never raised her voice. Never drank too much. Never lost control. People stared when we went out. I could feel their judgment crawl across my skin. One night, I asked, Do you care what people think? Lenora took a sip of her drink. People only judge what they can't afford. I told myself it wasn't so bad. She didn't hurt me. She didn't belittle me. She didn't demand love. She offered security. And God, I needed that. But then came the checkups. She framed them as concern. You're important to me, she said one morning. I need to know you're healthy. Her doctor, Dr. Callow, worked out of a private clinic that didn't appear on Google Maps. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He asked about my family. Any history of kidney failure? Heart disease? Autoimmune disorders? He drew blood. A lot of it. I joked. You planning to clone me or something? He didn't smile. After the third appointment, I asked Lenora, Why so many tests? She brushed imaginary lint from her sleeve. I don't like surprises. Then she disappeared. No warning. No explanation. 1 week passed. Then 2. Her driver stopped coming. My messages went unread. I told myself not to panic. But panic crept in anyway. That apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt borrowed, temporary. On the 15th day, a black SUV pulled up outside. The driver opened the door. Miss Blythe wants to see you, he said. I should have refused. I didn't. The SUV smelled like leather and something faintly sweet air freshener trying too hard to cover something else. The door shut with a soft, expensive thud behind me. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see my own reflection. The driver didn't look at me. We pulled away from the curb. "Where are we going?" I asked. No response. I told myself not to overreact. Lenora didn't owe me explanations. That was part of the arrangement. Still, my chest felt tight, like I'd missed a step on a staircase and hadn't hit the ground yet. The city thinned out as we drove. Streetlights grew farther apart. Familiar buildings gave way to long stretches of road lined with trees and fencing. "This isn't her house," I said. The driver's jaw tightened slightly. That was the only reaction I got. We turned onto a private road marked by a small sign that read, "No trespassing. Private property." The gate slid open without the car slowing down. That's when my instincts finally started screaming. I reached for the door handle. Locked. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. The driver spoke for the first time, voice low. "Relax, you'll be comfortable soon." That sentence did it. I lunged forward, grabbing the back of his seat. The car swerved slightly. "Stop the car," I shouted. Pain exploded at the base of my skull. Something sharp, fast. My vision fractured into light and static. The last thing I felt was the weight of my own body slumping forward, and the strange thought that I'd made a terrible, irreversible mistake. I woke up breathing shallow, panicked breaths. The air smelled clean, too clean, sterile. There was a dull, spreading ache in my side, deep, internal, wrong. I tried to move my arms and felt resistance. Straps. My heart rate spiked. The sound of a monitor responded immediately, beeping faster, louder. "Easy," a voice said. I turned my head as much as I could. Dr. Callow stood near the foot of the bed, clipboard in hand, expression neutral. He looked exactly the same as he always had. Calm, detached, professional. "What did you do to me?" I croaked. "You came through surgery remarkably well," he said, like we were discussing a routine dental procedure. "Surgery?" My mouth felt dry, thick. "Where's Lenora?" He paused, just long enough to register. "She's resting," he said. "You should do the same." I tried to sit up. Pain tore through my abdomen like fire, ripping a scream out of me before I could stop it. "Don't," he said firmly. "You'll tear sutures." I looked down. There was a thick bandage stretched across my right side, just above my hip. Tubes ran from beneath it into machines I didn't recognize. My hands started shaking. "You took something from me," I said. "Didn't you?" Callow didn't answer immediately. He adjusted something on the IV stand. "You were a rare match," he said finally. "Extremely rare." My breathing became ragged. "A match for what?" "For survival," he replied. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving the door to close softly behind him. I screamed until my throat burned. No one came. Hours passed. Or minutes. Time didn't make sense under medication and fear. Eventually, a nurse entered. She avoided eye contact. "Can you tell me what day it is?" I asked desperately. She hesitated. "Tuesday." "How long have I been here?" "Since Sunday." Panic surged again. "I want to call the police." Her face tightened. "That's not advisable." "Why not?" I demanded. She lowered her voice. "Because you signed documents." "I didn't sign anything." She looked at me, then really looked, and for a brief moment, something like pity crossed her face. "You should rest," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." When she left, I noticed the camera in the corner of the ceiling. Watching. The envelope arrived that evening. Thick. Heavy. Inside was cash. More money than I'd ever held in my life. Along with a handwritten note. Lenora's handwriting was elegant. Precise. "Jonah, I regret that this had to be handled without your consent. Time was not a luxury I had. You were compatible. Willingly or not, you saved my life. You still have one healthy kidney. People live full lives with less. This money is enough for you to start over somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. Do not contact authorities." This arrangement was protected legally and privately. Any attempt to interfere will result in consequences far worse than what you've already endured. I wish you peace. L. I stared at the note until the words blurred. She never said thank you. Recovery was slow, painful, isolating. No visitors, no calls, no explanations beyond what I already knew. They discharged me after 10 days. A driver took me back to my apartment, the same one overlooking the marina. It felt wrong now, like a crime scene that had been cleaned too thoroughly. I packed what I could carry, sold everything else. 3 weeks later, I left California. I changed my name in Missouri, took a job stocking shelves overnight, avoided doctors unless absolutely necessary. Sometimes, late at night, when the store is quiet and the lights hum overhead, I feel a phantom ache in my side. A reminder. She's out there, alive, because of me. And I finally understand the truth. I wasn't her companion. I was her contingency plan. I learned how quiet the world becomes after something like that happens to you. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. The kind where sound still exists, but none of it feels meant for you. I relocated to Hawthorne, Missouri, a town small enough that no one asked questions and big enough that nobody cared who I used to be. I rented a basement room from an older couple who barely acknowledged my existence. Cash rent, no paperwork, just the way I wanted it. I worked overnight shifts at a warehouse off the interstate, stacking boxes under fluorescent lights that hummed like tired insects. No windows. No mirrors. Perfect. The scar healed faster than my head did. Doctors say losing a kidney doesn't change your daily life much. They're right physically. You wake up, you walk, you work. Your body adapts. Your mind doesn't. Every ache feels suspicious. Every dizziness makes your heart jump. I drank less water than I should have, terrified of feeling anything abnormal. I stopped sleeping on my right side because the pressure reminded me too much of the hospital bed. I didn't dream at first. Then the dreams started. Lenora never screamed in them, never chased me. She didn't need to. She just watched. Sometimes she sat across from me at a dinner table I couldn't leave. Other times she stood behind glass, hand resting calmly against it, like she was checking on an investment. I woke up soaked in sweat, hand clutching my side, heart racing like I'd been running. I thought about going to the police more times than I could count. But I never did. Because when you replay everything honestly, you realize how clean she was about it. How insulated. How protected. I had signed contracts, vague ones, buried under legal language I hadn't understood at the time. Medical consent forms I barely remembered scribbling my name on during routine visits. Non-disclosure agreements, disguised as privacy protections. And the money, that was the ugliest part. Because I used it. Paid rent, bought groceries, built a quiet life on top of something stolen from me. That guilt sat heavier than the pain ever did. 6 months after I left California, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a small envelope and a newspaper clipping folded neatly. The clipping showed a photo of a woman exiting a private medical facility, walking confidently, supported by a cane she didn't seem to need. Lenora. Alive. Healthy. Smiling faintly at the camera. The headline read, Philanthropist Lenora Blythe, funds new medical wing. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single card. Take comfort in knowing you mattered. L. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not thank you. Not I'm sorry. You mattered. Like a part. Like a resource. Like something consumed. That night, I burned the card. Watched the flame curl the edges inward until nothing recognizable remained. Years passed. I stayed invisible. That became my skill, my survival tactic. I learned that horror doesn't always come with violence, or monsters or screams. Sometimes it comes wrapped in silk, with good posture and impeccable manners. Sometimes it sounds like opportunity. Sometimes it asks politely. I still avoid restaurants with private dining rooms. I don't trust doctors who smile too easily. I flinch when people talk about mutually beneficial arrangements. And every now and then, when I'm alone and the world is quiet, I press my palm against my scar and remind myself, I survived. But survival isn't the same as winning. She took something from me I'll never get back, not just an organ, but the belief that help doesn't always come with a price tag carved into your body. If you're listening to this and you think desperation can't make you blind, you're wrong. It doesn't feel like blindness. It feels like relief. Until you wake up strapped to a bed, realizing you were never the beneficiary. You were the solution. And solutions don't get happy endings. I never planned on working nights. Night shifts are something people fall into, not something they choose. They're for folks running from something, or towards something they don't want anyone else to see. For me, it was debt. By the time I took the graveyard shift at the Red Pine fuel stop off Route 61, I was already drowning. Student loans, credit cards, a past due notice taped crooked to my apartment door like a quiet threat. The kind of problems that don't explode all at once but tighten slowly around your chest until breathing feels optional. Red Pine sat just outside a dying town called Millbrook, Pennsylvania. One diner, one bar, a Dollar General that never quite looked open even when it was. Route 61 cut through it like a scar, carrying truckers, insomniacs, and people who didn't want to be seen in daylight. The station glowed all night, fluorescent and lonely, surrounded by pine trees that whispered when the wind cut through them. After midnight, it felt like the whole world narrowed down to 4 gas pumps, a flickering coffee machine, and me. My name's Cal Henson. I was 28 then, looked older, felt worse. Most nights were quiet. That was the appeal. No boss breathing down my neck. No customers asking about rewards cards or lottery numbers. Just me, the hum of the coolers, and the occasional 18-wheeler rumbling past like distant thunder. I liked the silence. Silence doesn't judge you. On my 3rd week, the phone rang. It was 1:47 a.m. I remember because I checked the clock twice, annoyed. That phone never rang at night, ever. If someone wanted something, they walked in. I picked it up with one hand, pen still between my fingers. Red Pine Fuel. For a second, there was nothing, just breathing, slow, heavy, like the person on the other end was deciding something. Then a voice scraped through the line. "Is Rowan there?" Something about the way he said it made my neck tighten. "No," I said, "just me tonight." Another pause. Then, click. I stared at the receiver longer than I needed to, then hung it back up. Wrong number, I told myself. Next night. Same time. Ring. I hesitated this time before answering. Red Pine Fuel. "Is Rowan there?" Same voice, same gravel drag to it, no introduction, no politeness. "No," I said, sharper now. "There's no Rowan working here." Click. I stood there, listening to the dial tone buzz before slamming the phone down. By the 3rd night, my nerves were already shot. When you work alone long enough, your brain fills in gaps it shouldn't. Every shadow feels heavier. Every sound lingers a beat too long. I brought it up to my manager, Walt Brenner, when he came in around sunset to swap registers. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Did someone named Rowan used to work nights here?" Walt froze mid-count. "Why?" "Someone keeps calling for him." He didn't look at me for a few seconds. Just stared at the drawer. "Don't answer the phone anymore after midnight," he finally said. "That's it?" He snapped the drawer shut. "That's it." That should have been enough to scare me. It wasn't. I stopped answering the phone. Let it ring until it gave up. Sometimes it rang 6, 7 times in a row. The sound echoed through the empty store, digging into my skull. Then one night, just after 2, the door chimed. I looked up, and every instinct I had screamed wrong. He was tall, not bulky, lean, but solid. Work jacket. Mud on his boots. His face wasn't scary in the obvious way. That somehow made it worse. Calm eyes, controlled posture, like nothing surprised him anymore. He didn't browse, didn't look around. He walked straight to the counter. "You the night guy?" he asked. "Yeah." "What's your name?" I hesitated. "Cal." He nodded once. "Name's Hale Mercer." I didn't like the way he said it. Like it mattered. "I'm looking for Rowan." He doesn't work here anymore. I know. That caught me off guard. Hale leaned his elbows on the counter, close enough that I could smell cigarette smoke and cold night air. You talked to him? No. You sure? Pretty sure. His eyes stayed on mine longer than comfortable. People like Rowan, he said quietly, don't just disappear. A chill crawled up my spine. I just work here, man. He smiled, faint and humorless. So did he. He bought nothing, left nothing, just walked out. After that, things escalated. Hale started showing up every few nights. Sometimes he came inside. Sometimes he just stood outside the glass, watching, not hiding, letting me see him. The phone calls started again, too. Always the same question. Is Rowan there? I stopped sleeping well. That's when the messages started. The app wasn't Tinder. It was one of those discreet arrangement platforms people pretend not to know about. I downloaded it during a bad night when the numbers on my bank app stopped feeling real. Her username was Ivory Vale. She messaged first. You look tired. I almost laughed. We talked slowly. No flirting, no pictures, just money stress. Night jobs, feeling stuck. Then she said it. I help men who are honest about their situation. We met at a quiet steakhouse an hour away. She was older, early 50s, composed, expensive coat, sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her name was Maribel Cross. She slid an envelope across the table without drama. Think of it as breathing room, she said. I took it. That was the moment everything locked into place. Because I didn't know then that Rowan had taken money from her too, and people like Hale Mercer didn't collect debts for free. Once you accept money that isn't earned, it changes the way you hear silence. After meeting Maribel Cross, my nights at Red Pine felt heavier. The lights buzzed louder. Every set of headlights made my shoulders tense. Hale Mercer stopped pretending to be casual. He started coming in earlier, staying longer, asking questions that sounded harmless until you replayed them in your head hours later. You live alone, Cal? You still closing by yourself? Ever think about leaving town? I lied. A lot. Rowan stayed off my radar until Hale made it clear he wouldn't. One night Hale didn't come inside. He waited until my shift ended. I locked up, keys shaking in my hand when I heard boots on asphalt. Walking home? He asked from behind me. I turned slowly. That's not your business. He stepped closer. Everything becomes my business eventually. That was the night I went looking for Rowan. It took 2 days. Old coworkers, Facebook comments, a bartender with a memory too good for his own health. I found him holed up in a crumbling duplex near the river. Place smelled like mold and fear. Rowan looked worse than I expected. Gaunt, hands trembling. She's not just a sugar mommy, he said the moment I said Maribel's name. She's an investor, in people. He explained it in pieces. Money up front, no paperwork, favors later. Hale was her collector, not muscle, enforcement. She doesn't forgive, Rowan whispered. She replaces. That word stuck with me. Replace. That night, Maribel texted, Hale says you've been curious. Curiosity can be dangerous. I stopped replying. The next evening, Hale showed up angry for the first time. You went looking for him, he said flatly. I didn't. He slammed his hand on the counter hard enough to rattle the cigarette rack. Don't lie to me. The store felt too small. Too bright. He's done, I said. You got your money. Let it go. Hale stared at me like I'd said something amusing. No, he said softly. He broke an agreement. You stepped into it. That was when I understood. I wasn't collateral. I was next. The plan came together fast because it had to. Rowan and I met near the old rail yard. He was shaking. She'll kill me, he said. Not if she thinks you're gone, I replied. We set the trap at Red Pine. One last meeting, one last night shift. Hale came just after midnight. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded and led him outside. Rowan stepped from the shadows, hands raised. "I'll pay," Rowan said. "Everything." Hale didn't slow. I saw it in his eyes. There would be no deal. I swung first. The bat cracked against his shoulder. He stumbled. I hit again. Knee this time. He went down hard, gasping. Rowan froze. "Run!" I screamed. We didn't look back. By morning, I was gone. Apartment empty, phone smashed, cash left on the table. I never heard from Maribel again. Sometimes I still work nights. Different town, different name. And sometimes when the phone rings after midnight, I let it ring. Because I know what happens when you answer. I should have never downloaded that app. I didn't grow up poor. But I grew up counting. Counting dollars. Counting groceries. Counting how many days until payday. I grew up in a town called Ridgeway Falls, the kind of place people only know if they missed an exit on the highway. 2 hours outside of Ashford City, all rusted signs, gas stations with flickering lights and diners where everyone knows your name whether you want them to or not. My dad worked HVAC, summers baking on rooftops, winters crawling through frozen crawl spaces. My mom cleaned offices at night. She smelled like lemon disinfectant when she came home, no matter how many showers she took. They weren't dramatic people. They didn't talk about dreams much, they talked about survival. So when I got into Hawthorne State University, they acted like I'd won the lottery. "You're gonna make it out," my dad said, gripping my shoulder too tight. "Just don't screw it up." I didn't plan on screwing anything up. But life doesn't wait for plans. By October of my freshman year, the numbers didn't add up anymore. My apartment was a converted attic above a closed nail salon. One window, slanted ceiling, radiator that clanked like it was coughing up a lung. Rent, $740. Utilities, variable, which meant always bad news. Books, robbery, legal robbery, food. Whatever was cheapest, I worked nights unloading trucks at a distribution warehouse near the river. Midnight to 6 a.m., the kind of job where no one asked questions and no one learned your name. By the time I walked home, my hands shook from exhaustion and caffeine. My body smelled like cardboard and diesel. I slept through lectures. I stopped answering texts. I lived on ramen, peanut butter, and cheap black coffee that tasted like burnt regret. Other students wore Patagonia jackets and talked about weekend trips like they were grocery runs. I didn't hate them, but I felt invisible next to them, like I didn't belong in the same world. The night everything changed, it was raining sideways. Cold rain. Loud rain. The kind that makes the city feel smaller and meaner. I was sitting on my mattress, laptop balanced on my knees, staring at my bank app. $46.19 rent was due in 4 days. I laughed. Just once. Short and ugly. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from a private campus group chat. One I barely remembered joining. Not proud of it, but it helped. If you're desperate, you're desperate. Under it was a link. No explanation. Just a name. Ballora, not on the App Store, not on Google Play. The download page looked expensive, minimal, clean. Almost too clean. Black background. Gold emblem. No reviews. I hesitated. Then I thought about boiling pasta with ketchup again. I installed it. Ballora didn't look like a dating app. No swiping, no bios, no filters. It looked like a menu. Listings scrolled vertically, calm and quiet. Dinner companion, 2 hours, $800 gallery escort. Discreet, $1,200 private conversation. Overnight. Inquire. My chest tightened. This wasn't sex. At least, not openly. Then one listing stopped me cold. Lorraine Halcrow profile photo. Mid-50s. Dark silver hair. Sharp cheekbones. Eyes that looked like they knew things they didn't say out loud. Elegant. Controlled. Dangerous in a subtle way. Her description was one sentence. Looking for presence, not performance. Before I could even process it, my phone buzzed. A message. Lorraine, you're online. I swallowed. Me. Yeah, I'm just looking. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then. Lorraine. I don't waste time. 3 hours. Dinner and conversation. $9,500 cash. No physical expectations. I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. That number didn't feel real. That number felt like freedom. Me. Why that much? A pause. Long enough to make my skin crawl. Lorraine. Because I don't want someone who needs to pretend. My stomach twisted. Me. Why me? Lorraine. Because you're tired. And tired people don't lie well. That should have scared me. It didn't. It felt accurate. Saturday night came fast. Too fast. At 8:15 p.m., a matte black town car idled across the street from my building. No logo. No plates I recognized. I almost didn't go. I stood in the doorway, rain misting my face, heart pounding like I was about to commit a crime. Then my phone buzzed. Lorraine. If you're having doubts, stay home. I won't ask twice. That did it. I got in the car. She was already inside. Lorraine Halcrow didn't smile when she saw me. She assessed. Sit, she said calmly. Her voice was smooth, educated, and completely emotionless. The car smelled like leather and something floral but sharp. You look younger than your profile, she said. I am, I replied. She nodded. Good. That wasn't comforting. The house was in Ravenshade Hills, old money territory, winding roads, iron gates, no sidewalks. Her home wasn't massive, but it felt intentional. Warm lighting, soft music. Everything placed carefully like a museum someone still lived in. Dinner was already prepared. She poured wine. I declined. Smart, she said. Alcohol makes people careless. We ate. She watched me eat, didn't touch her plate. So, she said softly, tell me what you're afraid of. I laughed nervously. That's kind of personal. She tilted her head. You're in my house for money, she said. Don't pretend this is polite company. I exhaled. Being stuck, I said. Being broke forever. Being invisible. Her lips curved slightly. Yes, she whispered. That's it. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. Then I noticed the hallway. One door at the end, slightly open, light flickering inside. I don't know why, but it felt like it was watching me. Bathroom, I asked. She looked at me for a moment too long. Second door on the right, she said. Her voice was different now. Colder. I walked down the hall and stopped, because the door at the end wasn't a bathroom. It was stairs, leading down, and from below. I heard something move. My heart dropped. Behind me, Lorraine's voice echoed softly. That area is private. I turned. She was smiling, but her eyes were empty. And that's when I realized this wasn't companionship. This was selection. She wasn't buying my time, she was studying me. For a second, neither of us moved. Lorraine stood at the end of the hallway, one hand resting lightly against the wall, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. The soft lighting behind her carved shadows into her face, making her cheekbones look sharper, her eyes darker. I got turned around, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. She stepped closer, slow, unhurried. This house isn't confusing, she replied. People just walk where they want, instead of where they're told. I swallowed. Bathroom. I tried again. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she turned and pointed. Second door. Don't wander. The way she said wander felt like a warning, or a threat. I nodded and moved past her, forcing myself not to run. Inside the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned over the sink, gripping the porcelain until my knuckles went white. My reflection looked wrong, paler, eyes too wide. I splashed water on my face and told myself to get through dinner, collect the money, and never think about this night again. But when I unlocked the door and stepped back into the hall, something had changed. The house felt quieter. Too quiet. And the door at the end of the hall was now fully open. I didn't mean to go down there. I want to make that clear. I took one step toward the living room, then another. But my eyes kept drifting to the stairs. The light below flickered faintly, like a dying bulb struggling to stay alive. And beneath that flicker was a smell. Old wood, damp concrete, something metallic. My chest tightened. I told myself Lorraine probably forgot to close it. I told myself rich people have weird basements. I told myself a lot of things. Then I heard it. A soft sound, like someone shifting their weight. Down there. I froze. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Just the hum of electricity and that faint, irregular movement. Every instinct screamed at me to go back to the living room. Instead, I stepped onto the first stair. The basement was narrower than I expected. Low ceiling, exposed beams, concrete walls stained with age. A single bulb hung from a wire, swaying slightly. Under it was a table. On the table sat a ledger and an old freestanding mirror with a cracked corner. The air felt heavier down there, like it pressed against my chest. I picked up the ledger. It wasn't a diary. It was a record. Names, dates, amounts, all written in neat red ink, page after page, different handwriting styles, same format. Some entries were crossed out, others were circled. Next to several names was a word written smaller, almost like a note to herself. Suitable, unstable, attached, resistant. My stomach dropped. These weren't clients. These were evaluations. I flipped another page. And then I saw a date from 3 weeks ago, and next to it, a name I recognized. A guy from my economics lecture. I hadn't seen him in class lately. My ears started ringing. That's when the mirror caught my eye. My reflection didn't move when I did. It lagged. Just a fraction of a second. Then something else appeared behind me. Not a person. A shape. Tall. Still. Watching. I spun around. Nothing. But the bulb flickered violently now, casting shadows that stretched too long, bent the wrong way. A whisper brushed past my ear. "Samuel." I dropped the ledger. That was enough. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Burst into the hallway. Lorraine was waiting. Of course she was. "You went somewhere you weren't invited," she said calmly. I pushed past her. She grabbed my wrist. Her grip was ice cold. "You don't understand what you walked away from," she said. I yanked free and ran. The house felt bigger now. Corridors stretching, corners where there hadn't been corners before. I slammed into the front door and tore it open. Rain hit my face like needles. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned. I don't remember flagging down the cab. I remember the driver asking, "Jesus, kid, what happened to you?" I remember not answering. Back in my apartment, I locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and collapsed onto the floor. My phone buzzed. A notification. Valora. One final message. Lorraine. Curiosity is expensive. Be grateful you couldn't afford it. Then the app vanished. Not crashed. Gone. No icon. No record. Nothing. I skipped work for 3 days. Skipped classes for a week. When I finally checked campus rumors, I found a post buried deep in a forum. Someone asking if anyone had seen Evan Rook lately. Last seen 3 weeks ago. My hands shook. I deleted the App Store history. I blocked unknown numbers. I stopped opening links I didn't recognize. I never went back to Ravenshade Hills, but sometimes late at night when I'm half asleep, I swear I hear a notification buzz. And for a split second, I smell flowers. Heavy. Sharp. And I remember the way Lorraine looked at me. Not like someone who wanted me, but like someone who had almost claimed me. Some doors close, others wait. I tried to move on. That's the lie people like to tell. that time fixes things. It doesn't. Time just teaches you how to live around the damage. By December, the semester was almost over. I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse, took cash under the table work helping a guy move furniture, ate better, slept worse. I never talked about Lorraine. Not really. Whenever her face surfaced in my mind, I pushed it down like a bad memory you don't want to give shape to. Because once you give it shape, it starts to feel real again. But reality doesn't care what you want. It was finals week when I saw him. I was in the student union waiting in line for burnt coffee, half dead from studying. The place was packed, stressed faces, tapping feet, phones buzzing nonstop. And then someone laughed behind me. Low, controlled, my spine locked. I turned slowly. The man standing 2 spots back was mid-40s, maybe older, expensive coat, calm eyes, the kind of face you forget the moment you look away. But I didn't forget his watch. Gold. Minimal. Same one Lorraine wore. He met my eyes. Smiled. Just slightly. My heart started hammering. Long week? He asked casually. Yeah, I muttered. He nodded like we were old friends. They always are when you're being evaluated. I stiffened. What? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You did well, he said. Most don't. My mouth went dry. Who are you? I asked. He chuckled softly. Someone who cleans up when curiosity gets messy. I left my coffee on the counter and walked straight out. Didn't look back. Didn't run. Running shows fear. That night, I finally did what I should have done weeks ago. I searched. Not for Laura, not Lorraine. I searched patterns, missing students, quiet dropouts, people who vanished without police reports or obituaries, the kind who fall through cracks because no one's looking hard enough. I noticed something unsettling. A lot of them had financial problems. A lot of them had no close family nearby. A lot of them had been seen entering nice cars late at night. Then I found an old article, 10 years back. Different city, same type of house, same phrasing. Private companionship network exposed. No charges filed due to lack of evidence. The names were redacted, but one line stuck with me. Participants were selected not for services rendered, but for psychological compatibility. I closed my laptop. I didn't need to know more. 2 nights later, I got an envelope under my door. No knock, no sound. Just there. Inside was cash. Neatly stacked. Exactly $9,500 and a note. 1 sentence. Consider this payment for your silence. My hands trembled. They hadn't chased me. They hadn't threatened me. They had closed the file. And that terrified me more than anything else, because it meant I was never the goal. I was a test. I finished the semester, moved apartments, changed my number, stopped picking up late-night work. I never told my parents the truth. I just said college was harder than I expected. Which was true. Just not in the way they imagined. Sometimes I still think about Lorraine. Not with desire. With understanding. She wasn't lonely. She wasn't broken. She was curating. People like her don't want bodies. They want minds that bend quietly. And when they don't bend, they disappear. If you're listening to this story and thinking, I'd never fall for that, good, that means you're not desperate yet. But remember this. The most dangerous offers don't look like traps, they look like relief. And somewhere out there, there's always someone watching, waiting for the moment you need help badly enough to stop asking questions. I never planned to become the kind of person who measured his worth in overdue notices and unread emails from loan companies. But life has a way of quietly cornering you until you start making choices you once judged other people for. I was 27 when I moved to Ashford Hollow, a tired Midwestern city that smelled like wet concrete and old river water. People didn't move there to start over. They moved there because they'd run out of places to go. I told myself it was temporary. 6 months, maybe a year. Just long enough to get my head above water. That was a lie I repeated every morning while brushing my teeth in a bathroom with flickering lights. I grew up in Toledo. Just me and my mom. No dad, no siblings, no safety net. She worked cleaning offices after hours and sewing alterations during the day. Her hands were always raw, her back always aching, but she never complained. When she died, heart failure at 51, the world didn't pause. Bills didn't care. Debt didn't grieve. By the time I landed in Ashford Hollow, I was buried under student loans and credit card interest. I rented a one-bedroom apartment below street level. The walls sweated in the summer. No matter how much bleach I poured into the corners, the place smelled like mold and pennies. I worked at a bookstore cafe called Paper Crane, heating milk, stacking dog-eared paperbacks, pretending I wasn't constantly doing math in my head. Rent, electric, minimum payments, food. Food was optional some days. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake listening to the pipes knock, heart racing, convinced the walls were closing in. That's when the app found me, or maybe I found it. It wasn't advertised anywhere obvious. No flashy ads. Just a discreet recommendation buried in a forum thread about alternative income streams. The app didn't call itself dating. It used words like arrangement and companionship. Everything looked sanitized, professional, almost corporate. I stared at the download screen for a long time before tapping install. I'm not doing anything wrong, I muttered to myself alone in my apartment. I'm just talking. I made a profile. No shirtless photos, no desperate bio. Just a picture where I looked clean, tired, harmless. I wrote that I liked books, late walks, and quiet conversation. I didn't mention the debt. I didn't mention the fear. Her message came less than an hour later. You look like someone who hasn't slept properly in a long time. Let me take you to dinner. I'll send a car. Her name was Lysandra Wolfe. I almost laughed. It sounded fake, too elegant, too deliberate. But curiosity mixed with hunger is a dangerous thing. I replied with a polite thank you and expected nothing. 5 minutes later, a confirmation popped up. Restaurant. Time. A black car. The restaurant was expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Soft lighting. Heavy silverware. Waiters who moved like ghosts. I felt like a fraud in my thrift store jacket, tugging at the sleeves, wishing I hadn't come. Then I saw her. Lysandra wasn't young and she didn't pretend to be. Her hair was silver white, pulled back cleanly. Her dress was dark blue, tailored, timeless. She wore confidence the way some people wear perfume. Quiet but unmistakable. She smiled when she saw me. "Caleb," she said, like my name belonged to her already. "You're thinner than your photos." I didn't know whether to apologize or thank her. "Sit," she added gently. "You look hungry." That word again. Hungry. Dinner felt unreal. Oysters, steak, wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. She didn't flirt. She didn't touch me. She asked questions, real ones, about my childhood, about my mom, about what I'd wanted to be before survival took over. When the check arrived, she didn't even look at it. She slid an envelope across the table. "For your time," she said softly. Inside was cash, enough to cover my rent with room to breathe. My stomach dropped. I didn't think. She leaned forward just enough that I smelled her perfume. Something floral, sharp, expensive. "Relax. You haven't agreed to anything. I enjoy conversation. That's all I'm paying for tonight." I told myself I could walk away. I didn't. That was the beginning. Weekly dinners, long drives, concerts. She paid easily, casually, like money was an abstract concept. Sometimes she listened to me talk for hours without interrupting. Sometimes she stared at me like she was memorizing my face. "You remind me of someone," she said once, swirling her wine. "Who?" I asked. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Someone who promised they'd never leave." I laughed it off. I didn't understand then that some people don't joke about abandonment. The first time she invited me to her house, I hesitated. "Just dinner," she said calmly. "You can leave whenever you want." Her estate sat beyond the city limits, iron gates sliding open without a sound. Inside, everything smelled faintly of flowers and disinfectant, the kind of clean that felt intentional. Halfway through dinner, she asked, "Do you trust me, Caleb?" I shrugged. "I think so." She set her glass down. "Don't think. Say it." I met her eyes. Something cold moved behind them. "I trust you," I said. Her smile returned, slow and satisfied. "Good," she whispered. "That matters more than you realize." Later that night, I got lost in her hallway and opened the wrong door. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything stopped being an arrangement and started becoming a trap. I closed the door so slowly my fingers cramped, every muscle in my body locked tight like I'd stepped onto thin ice. The hallway felt different on the way back. Narrower. Quieter. My own footsteps sounded too loud, like they didn't belong in that house. When I turned the corner, Lysandra was standing there, hands folded neatly in front of her, as if she'd been waiting the whole time. "Bathroom?" she asked, head tilted. "Yeah," I said too fast. "Your place is big." A pause, just a fraction of a second. "Big houses have rules," she said calmly. "Some doors are private." I didn't mean to. "I know." She smiled, stepped closer, and fixed an imaginary wrinkle in my sleeve. "Curiosity is natural, but it's also how people get hurt." The way she said hurt made my stomach tighten. That night I left earlier than usual. She didn't protest, didn't text me afterward either. The silence bothered me more than if she had. Over the next few weeks things shifted. She started asking where I was when I wasn't with her, who I talked to, why I took so long to reply. Her tone stayed soft, almost affectionate, but the questions stacked up like bricks. One night, over dinner, she reached across the table and brushed my cheek with her thumb. "You're sleeping poorly," she said. "I'm fine." "No," she corrected gently. "You're not." She paid my rent that month without asking, then my utilities, then sent me a screenshot of a student loan payment, paid in full like it was a cute surprise I should have run right then. Instead I said, "Thank you." She watched me closely. "People say that when they feel owned." I laughed nervously. "I don't." "Good," she replied, "because ownership is earned." The next time I stayed over, I woke up on her velvet sofa well past midnight. The house was silent, too silent, no hum of electricity, no distant traffic. I checked my phone, no signal. Then I heard it, a soft metallic scrape. Outside. I crept toward the window, heart banging so hard I was sure she'd hear it from wherever she was. Across the lawn, a light burned inside the old tool shed near the tree line. The door was cracked. I don't know why I went closer. Maybe part of me still needed proof that I was imagining things. That exhaustion had finally cracked something in my brain. Through the gap, I saw her. Lysandra stood under the harsh bulb wearing a clear plastic raincoat, hair pulled back tight. In her hand was a knife so clean it reflected the light. On the floor sat a large wooden trunk, old and scarred, shaking violently. Something inside it made a wet, muffled sound. My vision tunneled. My hands flew to my mouth to stop myself from making noise. She raised the knife without hesitation. I stumbled back, barely remembering how I got inside, barely remembering lying down on the sofa and pulling the blanket over myself like a child pretending to sleep through a nightmare. Minutes later, or hours, she sat beside me. Her hand brushed my hair. "You're safe," she whispered. I didn't move. "You won't ever leave me," she said softly, like a promise she was making to herself. I forced a laugh that scraped my throat raw. Why would I? Her fingers stopped. Slowly, she leaned close enough that I could feel her breath on my ear. Because everyone else did. The next morning I lied. "My sister's sick," I said, already backing toward the door. "I should go check on her." Lysandra smiled. Picked up her phone. Let's call her. Before I could stop her, she hit play. My sister's voice came through the speaker, panicked, shaky. Except it wasn't real. It was Lysandra's voice, perfectly copied. My knees nearly buckled. She watched my face like she was reading subtitles only she could see. I like honesty, she said calmly. Lies complicate things. That was the day I disappeared. I quit my job, packed what I could fit into a backpack, told my landlord I was leaving town. I took a bus to Chicago, crashing on a friend's couch telling him I needed a reset. For a while it worked, then the flowers arrived, white lilies, no card. Then I started noticing reflections that moved a half-second too late. Silver hair in passing windows. Footsteps outside my door that stopped when I listened. The letter came last. Cream-colored envelope. Wax seal. Inside, a photo of me asleep in my friend's apartment, taken from inside the room. On the back, in her elegant handwriting, "You said you trusted me. I don't use apps anymore. I don't accept gifts. I don't let anyone get close enough to learn my routines." Because desperation didn't just lead me to her. It taught her exactly how to own me. And I know, deep in my bones, that one day she'll come to collect what she believes is hers. I never planned to end up desperate. That's the part people don't get. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides, yeah, today I'll sell my comfort, my body, my pride, whatever it takes. It happens slowly, quietly, bills stacking up, nights getting shorter, your reflection looking more tired every time you pass a mirror. I was 19 when my family cracked in half. My dad didn't leave in a dramatic way. No screaming, no slammed doors. He packed a suitcase one Sunday morning like he was going on a business trip, kissed my mom on the forehead, told me he'd call. He never did. 2 weeks later we found out he'd moved to southern Arizona with a woman who couldn't have been older than 23. Someone he met through work, according to the one message he finally sent. That message was the last thing resembling responsibility he ever showed. My mom stopped eating after that. She already had diabetes, but heartbreak does something cruel to the body. Her blood sugar went wild. Hospital visits became routine. I learned words no 18-year-old should know. Co-pays, deductibles, insulin brands, payment plans. We were lower middle class before. Comfortable enough. After my dad left, we were drowning. I tried community college, tried pretending I was normal. But every time my phone buzzed, it was another reminder. Pharmacy declined. Insurance delay. Doctor's office calling, so I dropped out. I worked construction for a while, then delivery, then whatever paid cash fast. By 26, I was bartending nights at a place called the Rusty Finch right off Harbor Avenue. Not classy, not dangerous either. Just tired. Sticky floors. Neon signs buzzing like insects. A jukebox that only played old country and classic rock. Locals who drank like it was their second job. I worked doubles, slept 4 hours a night, ate whatever was free or forgotten. That's when she walked in. It was a Tuesday. Slow night. Rain tapping against the windows, making the whole street smell like wet asphalt and cheap cigarettes. I was wiping down the counter when the door opened, and the room changed. Not loudly, just shifted. She didn't rush inside to escape the rain. She didn't shake water from her coat. She walked in like the weather didn't apply to her. Mid-50s, maybe. Hard to tell. Smooth skin but not young. Maintained. Like someone who paid professionals to slow time down. Her coat was long, dark. Probably worth more than my car. Hair pinned neatly. Silver streaks intentional, not accidental. She scanned the room once, uninterested, then took a seat directly in front of me. "Vodka soda," she said. Calm voice. No accent I could place. "Lime." I poured it. She didn't even look at the glass. She looked at me. Not like drunk women did, not flirty, not hungry. Evaluating. "You work too hard," she said. I laughed because people say dumb stuff to bartenders all the time. Story of my life. She finally picked up the drink, took a small sip and nodded. "Good pour. Thanks." She watched me for a second longer. Then, "What's your name?" "Evan." "Evan," she repeated, tasting it. "I'm Maribel." We shook hands. Her grip was firm, warm, confident. She stayed for an hour, barely drank. Asked casual questions, where I grew up, if I lived nearby, whether I liked the job. I gave her half-truths. Everyone does. Before she left, she slid a folded bill across the counter. Way more than the drink cost. "Eat something tonight," she said softly. I watched her leave, the bell over the door chiming like nothing important had just happened. I didn't think about her again. Until she came back. Maribel started showing up twice a week, always alone, always dressed like she was on her way somewhere better. Sometimes she talked. Sometimes she just watched me work. One night she asked, "You ever feel like you're running in place?" I shrugged. "Feels more like running downhill most days." She smiled at that, not amused. Understanding. Another night after closing, she waited while I counted the register. "You look exhausted," she said. "When was the last time someone took care of you?" I didn't answer, because the truth would have sounded pathetic. She leaned closer. I caught her perfume. Clean, expensive, faintly floral. "I could make your life easier," she said. "If you let me." I laughed again, nervous this time. "And here comes the catch." She didn't deny it. "I enjoy company," she said, "and I'm generous with people who are good to me." Silence sat between us. She slid a card across the counter. Thick, heavy. No last name, just a number and an address. "Dinner, tomorrow, 7. I stared at the card, then at her. "You don't have to decide now," she said, already standing. "But you should." She left. That night my mom called from the hospital. Her insulin dosage had changed. Insurance wouldn't cover the new one fully. I stared at my empty fridge afterward. And the next evening I drove to the address on the card. The address led me out past the city, past strip malls and pawn shops, into a quiet stretch of road lined with tall trees and gated properties. The kind of place where streetlights were unnecessary because everyone could afford their own security. The gate opened automatically when I pulled up. I remember thinking how stupidly calm everything felt. No barking dogs, no traffic noise, just tires rolling over stone. The house wasn't a mansion in the flashy sense. No gold statues or fountains. It was worse than that. Subtle wealth, clean lines, dark glass, a long driveway disappearing into shadow. Maribel was waiting at the door. "You came," she said, like she already knew I would. Dinner was unreal. Not fancy restaurant food, home food, warm, real. Someone had cooked, not catered. She poured wine, asked me about my mom again, listened, actually listened. "You don't owe me anything tonight," she said when she caught me stiffening. "Just relax." And I did. That was the dangerous part. Over the next few weeks, things escalated gently. No pressure, no rules spoken out loud. She offered help with my mom's bills, paid them directly, didn't ask questions. "You don't need to bartend anymore," she said one morning, tracing circles on my chest. "You look better rested." I moved in. At first it felt like winning the lottery without buying a ticket. Big bedroom, clean clothes, food always ready. A housekeeper named Rosa who barely spoke but watched me like I was inventory. Maribel insisted I sleep late, eat more. "You're too thin," she'd say, touching my ribs. She liked control, but softly, deciding what I wore, what I ate, where I went. "You don't need the world," she told me once. "You have everything here." That's when things started to feel off. It began with the fatigue. I'd sleep 10 hours and still wake up exhausted. My muscles felt heavy, like I'd run miles in my dreams. Sometimes I'd find bruises on my arms, finger-shaped, faint yellow and purple. "Do you sleepwalk?" I asked her once. She smiled, brushing my hair back. "You're adjusting." Then the meals changed. Still delicious, still filling. But afterward, I'd feel weak, dizzy, like my blood pressure dropped straight through the floor. One night I woke up to a sound. A low hum. Mechanical. Rhythmic. I followed it down the hall, barefoot on cold stone, until I reached a locked door I'd never noticed before. The hum stopped. The door stayed closed. The next morning my arm hurt. Small puncture marks, like needles. "Maribel," I said, holding my arm up. She kissed it gently. "You're safe." That wasn't an answer. I started snooping. Her study was always locked. One afternoon while she was out, I forced it. Shelves of books, medical journals, old photographs, men, young men, different faces, same progression, healthy, thinner, hollow, gone. And then I found mine. Evan Cross. Blood type O negative. Excellent compatibility. I barely had time to breathe before footsteps echoed behind me. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," Maribel said calmly. Before I could move, something slammed into my skull. I woke up dressed in black, weak, barely conscious. Music echoed through a massive room lit with candles. People in masks, blindfolds, laughing. Maribel stood beside me, radiant. "You fed me well," she whispered. "Now you feed us." Something bitter burned down my throat. Hands grabbed me. Nails, teeth. Pain exploded everywhere. I screamed until my voice gave out. Then, sirens, chaos, people ran, hands let go. I collapsed, bleeding, alone. I woke up in a hospital bed. My mom was there. Alive, crying. Police caught a few people. Not Maribel. They called it a cult. Blood rituals. Longevity obsession. They said I was lucky. But sometimes late at night I still smell her perfume and I know somewhere she's still hungry.